In the previous video, we looked at the calculator application using an if-else-if demo to update the solution of various mathematical operations. And the user could choose plus, minus, multiply, or divide. And as they changed this operator that's being shown here in this label, the expression would recalculate, as well as if they changed the values in either of these two text boxes. We used an if-else-if structure in accomplishing that in that previous example. And what I want to do is show you how you can rewrite that using a switch structure. In this particular example with if-else-if, we were always comparing or looking at the same value, LBL operation.text, LBL operation.text, LBL operation.text, and once again. So when you're looking at the same values, switch is a great structure to use. It's a little more readable. And what I'm going to do is select that entire structure, and I'm just going to delete it. And we'll replace it using switch. So I'm going to type the word switch, and then what I want to evaluate is LBL operation.text. I'm going to put that in parentheses. And then I'm going to create my curly brackets. And inside those curly brackets, we're going to have case. And what I want to look for is if LBL operation.text equals a plus sign, and it's going to be a literal string since it's a text property, it's a string property. I'm going to put that in quotes. I'm going to have a colon. And then what I want to have execute if that is a match, which is going to be solution equals num1 plus num2. In fact, I'm going to write this a little bit differently. Let's make this txt solution.text equals, and I'm going to take num1 plus num2 and convert that to a string. And then I need to conclude each case clause with the word break. Simply tells it to stop executing the switch at that point and ignore all the other cases. So next we'll look for a case, we'll look for LBL operation being equal to the minus sign. So case, quote, minus quote, colon. And I'm just going to copy these two lines and paste. And I simply want to have a subtraction operation happening here. Oops, one thing I'm missing is my parentheses after toString. That's why we're getting a little squiggly there. And then again, I'm going to select those lines, paste, make this one matching an X. We want to do multiplication. Paste again. This one's going to be division. We'll do division operator here. And on this one, since we could get a decimal, I'm going to do 2 decimal places. So N2 inside the toString parentheses. And then we conclude with a default case, which will be txt solution.text equals quote quote. And I'll have my break statement. So there is our switch case structure. I think it's a little more readable than that if-else-if, and it works great when we're comparing just one value. I no longer need this line of code down here that says txt solution.text equals solution.toString because we're not using the value of solution. I'm going to delete that, otherwise we're just going to get zeros all the time. And I also no longer need this variable called solution. I'm going to get rid of it. Okay, so there's our switch. Very readable. Let's test it. So I can change to a subtraction operation, multiplication, division, back to addition, and I can change my text. And everything functions correctly. A little more elegant than that if, else, if. The if, else, if, however, really comes into play if we want to evaluate different expressions looking at perhaps different properties or different variables. But we're using the same one each time. Switch is the way to go. So here's another demonstration of the switch structure. I have a label here. It's simply named label 1. I didn't bother to change the name of the label. And it has an image property. And I've set the image to one of 5 values that I've imported through the image property window. And I then have 5 picture boxes on my form, each one of those containing one of those 5 images. And in the picture box, I set the size mode to stretch image, so shrunk it down to fit the picture box, and I have the little thumbnails of each of my 5 images. Then I put on top of that, or on top of each one of those, a label with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and some instructions to the user that to view an image, press the number key of the thumbnail. So these are not buttons, they're not clicking, they're simply going to press a key on the keyboard to change the image over here on the right hand side. Let's just test this so you can see it work. So if I press the 2 key, I see the koala. The 3 key, I see the lighthouse. 4, I get the penguins. And 5, I get the tulips. And 1 takes me back to the desert image. Let's take a look at the code. I have for my form an event set up for the key press event. So I selected the form, and the properties went to the events, chose key press, and entered a value of change picture. My change picture code then has in the declaration statement, a variable called E, which is of type key press event args, which stands for arguments. One of those arguments is which key was pressed. That's the keychar property of E. So I'm doing a switch on E.keychar, and if that is 1. Now I use single quotes here because this is a single character. If I use double quotes, I'd get an error. I'm going to try to convert a string to a character value. So we use single quotes. So case 1, I'm going to set the label image to the desert image. If they press a 2, I'm going to set it to the koala. If they press the 3 key, we'll set it to lighthouse. 4 will show the penguins, and 5 brings up the tulips. If they press anything else, it's going to bring up a message box saying, sorry, only keys 1 through 5 are valid, with the title of invalid entry. Just to demonstrate that, let me run this again. So if I press the letter 4, I get the penguins, but if I press 7, I get a message box saying, sorry, only keys 1 through 5 are valid. Very nice, elegant solution, very readable. Now one thing I can do here is I can't have multiple cases, so I could add a case 6 I'll put that in single quotes. So if they press 5 or 6, it's going to bring up the tulips. And let's add one here for the 3. So if they press, let's say 9. And from a design standpoint, I don't know why you would do this, but I want to show that you can have multiple cases match up. So I've got 3 and 9 are the same, and 5 and 6 are the same. Let's just test this. And so I'm going to press the 9 key, and I get image number 3. And if I press the 6 key, I get image number 5. But if I press 7, I'm going to get that error again, saying, sorry, only keys 1 through 5 are valid. So we can set up multiple cases. We cannot do case ranges though, like if you're taking VB, you see we can do with select case, we can do a range where case is something, say 3 to 9. It would take all those values in between. That's not an option here in the switch. If you want to do that, we'd have to do go back to using if, else if.